live here in the great state of Wisconsin, in the proud city of Two Rivers, and very happy to be telling anybody that wants to listen about how to build great places online or in person.
Yeah.
So thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah. Hey, it's honored. It's great to be here. I know we have so much in common. I know we could talk for hours, but one of the things that I thought was awesome when we started talking is that how you're doing a lot of community development locally. And I mean, you've done all kinds of community development looking at your background, and you've worked with some big brands and stuff like that. So, but I thought was cool is that we were talking about, our conversation was talking about how building a community offline and online is kind of an interesting thing today, especially with COVID and stuff like that. Can you give us a little rundown on kind of some of the examples of the local events and stuff like that you were talking about before?
Yeah, well, and just to tag onto that point that you're making, I think that this is going to be the year of the hybrid kind of community that has both the online and the offline components to it. It's never that they haven't been things that are working together. I mean, they've always sort of been the Reese's peanut butter cup, right? The two great things that taste great together.
Oh, yeah.
Man, now I'm hungry for candy.
I love Reese's peanut butter. It's my favorite. Yeah.
There you go. I knew what you're getting for Halloween. Anyways, yeah. So I think this has been something that I've kind of been involved with different groups since the beginning. There's local groups that are trying to find their footing. They're trying to get their members connected, and the challenge that you have in those live meetings is that you maybe meet once a month. And then the communications between that are something like email, which is really a highly inappropriate tool for building any kind of sense of community over time. Because you have newcomers come in, they don't know what the email threads were. There's missing emails. There's all kinds of lost dark knowledge, in the dark, and that I can't discover it. I can't search for it. Instead, I've always tried to push any of the groups that I've been involved with to say, like, you know what, it's so easy. Just set up a Slack channel, or let's set up some place for a collaboration space for us to work. A bit of a lie. It's not easy because it takes work and it takes some behavior change to do it. But to get people to that point where they have more of those regular sorts of exchanges with each other and they get more involved with each other, it really can help supercharge a group so that when they do meet in person, they can move that much further ahead in what they do. And I don't care if that community space is a Facebook group, a LinkedIn group, a discussion forum, an enterprise platform like a Mighty Networks or a Disciple or a Vanilla. They're all powerful tools that are there at our disposal. And so some of the local groups, to answer finally your question, that I've gotten involved with, here when my wife and I moved up here several years ago, we wanted to get a little bit more involved with the community in the area. And so one of the first things we ended up co-starting was something called BizStarts. And that was it's a Milwaukee-based organization, but they had sort of a statewide or even broader mandate of what they were trying to do. And the point was to try to foster entrepreneurship within the Manitowoc County area, which is the county where I live. And what I found was a lot of friends, a lot of people that were interested in doing similar kinds of things, or they were on a similar mission and trying to connect those different disparate groups, because there was an economic development group, Progress Lakeshore. There was a Main Street group, Two Rivers Main Street. There was a gentleman, Jeff Soxie, who was running something called Light Up the Lakeshore Business Idea Competitions. We all sort of banded together and started doing some of that work, and then trying to connect that to larger regional kinds of efforts, like the New North, which is the Northeast Wisconsin economic development, creature, whatever you want to call it, which is about sort of building entrepreneurship through the region. And so all of these groups have similar kinds of needs and similar kinds of wants, but how do we get them all talking to each other? And short of having like these big, summit meetings, which are great, but you go to a summit, you get inspired, you've got all these ideas, and you come home, and then your work life takes over. So you need those online spaces in order to be able to have a through line of conversation and collaboration over time.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about the continuing of the conversation is you get that like sort of built-in accountability to the group too. I know I'm in groups that meet like once a month, and it's like or I'm on a board of a group, even worse, right? You're on a board of a group and you meet once a month and you're like, oh shoot, I guess I remembered. I guess I was supposed to do something for that group, right? Exactly. Oh, I promised to do something and I didn't do it, right? And you get that kind of like, oh, oops, kind of thing, because it's an extra. It's not like as a client or whatever where they're going to be pounding on my door, kind of thing, So yeah, interesting. So I think the theme of this conversation, given your background and everything like that, is that we were talking about this. It's like campfires are in, megaphones are out, right? That's kind of the theme that we're talking about. So people joining us in the live stream, welcome. Feel free to subscribe and like and chat in the live stream. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I see a handful of people. Would love to see your comments, do that. But we're going to continue talking about campfires and megaphones and the differences between the two and all the good stuff that comes in between. But Todd, right now we're streaming to YouTube. I guess you could kind of call this a megaphone right now. What are some additional examples you may have on campfires? Like, what are some of the things that you're seeing in terms of elevating communities today?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think campfires happen naturally. If you think about the earliest online communities that were occurring, even back in the pre-World Wide Web days, there were bulletin boards, and so that those of us that are old enough to remember, the dial-up, screech of the modem and getting onto a bulletin board or getting onto AOL or any of those kinds of groups. Those early groups were indicative of how communities start to form. It's people that have this strong common interest, a bond, something that kind of brings them back, and it could be a hobby, it could be a game, it could be a favorite movie or a favorite director, anything like that, and it's a reason for those people to come together again and again and again. And so there's a variety of technologies that foster those kinds of campfire mentalities. And so what the distinction that I would draw is, and you said YouTube is one of the megaphones, and it certainly is. And so I wouldn't necessarily refer to a YouTube community. I might refer to a content academy community because there are characteristics that are closely shared between all the people that follow you and are interested in the kinds of content that you have to offer. And so it's possible there could be a sense of community that starts to develop on people that are leaving comments on your blogs or on your YouTube channel. The kinds of communities that tend to work a little bit better, though, are purpose-built for that persistence, so that you have people that can kind of come back again and again. There's comments there that stay in place, and so they're not quite as ephemeral as like individual YouTube videos, which get posted and people comment on, but then there's nobody that comes back to that necessarily and continues a thread of conversation. We're looking for the technologies that allow for those deeper sorts of interactions. And that could be a LinkedIn group, it could be a Facebook group, it could be an email listserv, an old school Google group that's out there. As long as people can kind of have a conversation that they don't have to go through a moderator to get everything approved every time, those are magical kinds of applications online. And now they're getting even more powerful, where it's not just text that we can exchange, but it's live video and it's audio. And so we see things like Discord for the gamer community, which is audio-based kinds of community as a setup. And even Clubhouse, I'm sort of on the fence about it because I don't think it's actually conducive to community. If anybody's tried, I don't know if you're on Clubhouse or if
it's funny. It's funny you say that because I'm a new, I'm dabbling in Clubhouse a little bit, and I find that it's very elitist. It's like you have to be a member of some type of clique in order to be a leader in that group. And maybe it's just because I haven't organized a lot of my own conversations yet, right? But like every time I go on there, it's like they have 5 or 6 people that they already know are going to be on stage. And if you're not, if you're not like in that, if you're not known, then you're not going to be in that conversation kind of thing. And maybe I should not say that. Maybe I'm not playing around with it enough, but it's
my jury is still very out about it.
Yeah.
I think they're going to find it very hard to scale a sense of community in that application, because yes, you can create clubs and you can do regular meetings for that. You have to have regular meetings so people can kind of come back in, reconnect with each other, have conversations, but as you said, it's a little bit of a cult of personality right now. It's only the people that are on stage that can talk. You've got to raise your hand if you want to talk. And then, like, how can I talk to other people in my group? I have no means of interaction with them unless I go form another clubhouse room and do it. And there's no persistence around, like that voice conversation happens and it goes away, and there's no way for me to search it or reference it or do anything with it again. It's a fun toy. I think it's a social media platform, but I don't think it's a community platform.
That's interesting. Todd, you would be the guy I should ask if we could do a clubhouse together at some point. But ultimately, or to do a stage of our own, whatever you want to call it. I don't know what to call it. Yeah. But coming soon, people. Yeah. But basically, I think what's interesting for Campfires, and I know for me a really good example that I had was I follow. Everyone knows I'm a big WordPress guy. Got a WordPress mug right here, right? And WordPress has a Slack community for anyone who contributes to WordPress. There's this giant Slack community. But what I've been finding is that there's a lot of like these sort of like micro communities that are building up off of this giant WordPress Slack. Like, for example, the Divi theme users have the organized. Actually, this is a very niche one. The organizers of Divi theme meetup groups have a Slack channel, right? So like, and we're not really a company. Like, we're not a business per se. Like, we don't get paid to be there, but we're there and we talk, right? Another example is I used to use the Headway theme. The Headway theme is now kind of defunct. They're not around, but we had a community of about 15, 25 active people, and I was on there every day, and I loved it because we all were there beating the drum about a common problem, right, or a common thing. What sucked is when the business died, the community like literally went crickets overnight, right? Because we no longer had that common core. So I think that's an interesting case. I've been meaning to like write a case study about that for years. It just hasn't come to it. So I'm glad I was able to share that here. So anyways, I thought that was an interesting sort of thing. But speaking, we got some questions here in the chat. So let's see here. Yolanda, hey Adrian, everyone here. Let's see here. I can add this to the broadcast. Yolanda asked, "Are there some organizations for which Campfires won't work?" Interesting question. Todd, you want to think about that or?
Yeah. So let me think about that. So Campfires probably wouldn't work for a company that's not big on trust. So
true.
I don't think I would have a CIA campfire. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I would. I'm sure that there are. So I think like actually that's probably a good example because you've got a group of intelligence people that probably wouldn't feel comfortable sharing things online. They wouldn't want to come together and have those kinds of conversations with each other. So it probably wouldn't work out very well as a campfire. There's a company I worked with some years ago that was working in an auction space, and so we had talked to them a little bit about maybe a potential for a community. And what we learned was the people who were buying things, in those auction setups, they didn't want to give their secrets out to anybody. They didn't want to have any conversations. Everybody else was the enemy. And so you need to think about that audience and sort of what their likes and dislikes are and sort of how they feel about each other. I'm not going to say it's impossible to do, but I think you need to be really careful about being crystal clear about what you are hoping people will do in a given community setup. There's another organization. It was a banking company out of New York that I was brought in to do a workshop with, and they were kicking around the idea of doing a community, sort of a blue chip club of high rollers and kind of getting them together to talk to each other. And it was the same thing. Like there was a lack of trust between those individuals, and so I was trying to figure out a way to make it work for them and sort of to share best ideas or have some bragging rights with each other within the space. But it doesn't always work out. So I think anytime before you're thinking about starting that kind, any kind of community, and I'm using community sort of equivalently with Campfire right now, the way that we're talking, you really need to spend some time beating up that concept of what that community is going to be. Not just like, hey, I want to do a community for all the people who are in my group or in my company or buying my product or service, but why do you want to bring them together? Like, what is it that's going to bind them together? Is it just the product, or maybe it's something about the lifestyle they live with that product, or that they're doing with it? How do you really hook it onto something that's at their core of what they care about, rather than, you know, like those communities that you mentioned on Slack, like the Div community, I think you called it. Like, those were people that were really fanatical about that particular add-on or technology, and that was what brought them together. They wanted to talk about sort of the intricacies of how this thing works, and there's sort of like this secret knowledge cabal, you know, that, that you guys had, that gave you a special feeling of being connected to these other people in the know. That's a great way for a community to work.
I think also what was interesting about the Headway group is that the actual owners of the theme or the company weren't really a part of it. I mean, they had access to it and they would post in there every once in a while, but it was really community driven, which I thought was interesting too.
It is. It's a problem for the company, though. So one of the reasons, like, you know, this happens with a lot of organizations that have a product, and they'll say, look, we really want to know what's going on in this community. We don't control it. We're actually a little bit alarmed that people are in there bashing us, or they don't like something that we're doing. And sometimes customers want that privacy to be able to say whatever is on their mind about the product or the service. But it is so in a company's interest to have a branded community for their product or service, even if it's just a high-level support community, and then maybe just enabling their super fans, you know, the 1% of people that really want to get in and talk about that particular cell phone model that they're using.
Yeah. Interesting. Yolanda, you're welcome. Yolanda says, thank you so much. So and it is challenging to teach trust, right? We agree on that for sure. Okay. A couple other sort of questions here. Genevieve is here and she says, what platform did you use for Milwaukee JobCamp? That's a really specific one, but I think that actually brings me into my next question. Here, I'll put Genevieve up here. What are some of the things you've been doing to get known local, right? We were talking about tips for getting to know things local. Yeah. So thanks for just kind of dropping us into that. So yeah, here we go.
Well, hi, Genevieve, and thanks for the question. Man, it has been quite some time since I thought about what technology we were using for that. We were using some kind of project collaboration platform, file sharing platform at the time. I don't think it's around anymore. You know, but it was very much like Basecamp. I don't think we were using Basecamp because we didn't use a paid version of that. I'll take a step back. Milwaukee JobCamp was like one of the formative moments of my career, and it was really a career pivot for me into the social space, like full time. Around the last downturn that we had, you know, 2007, 2008, when all these people lost their jobs, I and a group of some other people that were in the recruiting space at the time said, we need to do something to give back to the community. There were so many people that were in their jobs for all those years that they just kind of found themselves in a job market and were sort of, you know, their reaction was, LinkedIn, what is this stuff that I have to do now to find a job? And we wanted to equip them with a new set of skills in order to be able to engage with the job market. And you know, my personal visceral reaction was, as a recruiter, I had about, you know, 14, 15 years of experience at that time in the recruiting space. I hated job fairs with a passion. And so we did something that was on the unconference side of things. And we built this grassroots series of events called JobCamp that we ran over, I think, about maybe 2 years, you know, and helped, I think, maybe about 5,000 people by the time it was done. So it was a large scale event. It got a lot of nice media coverage in the area. All of our collaboration work was on just kind of a file sharing platform, and you could comment on it. Kind of something on the order of a Dropbox, I think, at the time. Pretty lightweight stuff. We did communicate a lot through email, which was not ideal. And we also used LinkedIn, you know, quite a bit. But we had social media. It was totally an organic social media lift. There was no paid advertising. Any kind of sponsorships that we had from organizations, we plowed back into the event, and we were able to help a lot of people with that. I was really proud of that. That was an early community effort for me.
Cool. That's great. We got some more questions. So Jeff asks, I hope you don't mind just random questions, Todd. That's kind of what we're doing live stream, right? So With a with a campfire approach, how important is it to have a leader, in quotes, with a question mark? How is it important to have a leader, natural or chosen? And that's by Jeff. I believe it's, I don't know, Percival, I believe. So
Jeff Percival. Hey.
Percival. There you go, Percival. Thank you.
Jeff.
Yeah.
Hey,
yeah.
Jeff. Good to see you, my friend. So it's a wonderful question. And whenever I'm talking about communities, or if I'm in front of a CEO or executive team, and I'm kind of going through my spiel of sort of how I look at them, having a leader in that community is one of the critical success factors. So many organizations put all of their intellectual and financial energy into building the platform, and very, very little into figuring out how they're going to actually get people involved with it. So they've built it, and now they're waiting for people to come, feel the dreams, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't work that way. And in fact, the early days of community are that intrepid individual who's going to be the leader, the community manager, for that space, reaching out one by one to get the involvement of people. And that is a hard lift. It's hard to do. And sometimes it's hard to get executives to wrap their head around that, because it does take some time and patience to be successful with it. Can that person ever be just sort of a natural leader who emerges? Yeah. I mean, I think that's how the early days of online communities worked, when you had sort of early gamer communities or discussion forums on topics of interest. You had people who would step forward and be moderators or volunteer moderators for that. There is still a space for those individuals within communities, especially like corporate run or organizationally run kinds of communities. I usually call those ambassadors, or not necessarily super users. That's a little bit of a different animal, but people that will help you to scale the size and engagement of that community over time. They're absolutely critical to success. You've got to have them. You got to include some salary for those people, because they need to be paid for their work. It is a full-time job.
Now, speaking of salary, what if you're an entrepreneur then? Like on the flip side, and you're not paying yourself.
Yeah,
right. Yeah. Then you're doing it out of love, right? There you go. So yeah.
Well, you probably are. I think for organizations that are startups, there are some lean ways to get into these kinds of organizations. If you've identified that community is going to be a core part of building your product and innovating that product and doing fast turnaround tests of it, which I think it is. I think it's a key use case for a lot of startups and entrepreneurial organizations. There are things you can do to get that going. So from a cost perspective, the platforms are easier to get and afford than ever. You could go grab Mighty Networks, for a freemium version. You can grab Slack. There's tons of others that are out there, and some low cost ones that aren't very difficult to get. And those are easy to turn on. And then there's going to be time and effort that's put into that, and maybe that's somebody on your team, or maybe it's you. But having those one-on-one touch points is important. I think the important thing is not to get overwhelmed by thinking about all the people that you need to connect with. It's about just focusing on the one that you're with at that particular moment, and just thinking about, okay, I talked to this person, they're great, they're on board, let's talk to the next one.
Yeah, that actually bounces off a question we got in the chat from, I believe it's CL here. He says,
yes, my friend.
Okay, Sai. The essence of community is ability to commune, right? Any thoughts on the best tech that blends humanity and tech experience without losing connection? Oh, lost the thing there. But basically, you're talking about channels like Slack and stuff like that. So any additional thoughts on tech that blends humanity and experience without losing connection? Interesting question, Sai. Yeah.
It is. He always has thought provokers, and I particularly appreciate that one. I think the technologies that we use need to put conversation first, and so there's a design aesthetic that you see in most digital agencies and website builders that are all about sort of putting their content, their curated content up front. This is my latest blog article. Read it. And that's great for that kind of web presence. But for an interactive community, conversation comes first. That needs to be at the top of the user experience. You need to enable those connections between people, and it maybe doesn't look as pretty as your blog website or your commercial website that you built. But when you get into that community area, I need to see what's the latest thing that I haven't read about. What are some of the top pieces of content in this community? What can I find here that I can't find anywhere else? Where's that guide? Where's that ebook? Where's that important stuff? So community platforms that give primacy to the conversations between individuals are useful at surfacing them in ways that work with just sort of the way our psychology works. They enable that humanity to shine through. And it's hard, especially text-based communities, which so many of them still are and will probably continue to be into the future. It's so easy to, you can't read body language. You can't read nuance in written text. Even with emojis, it's only a rough cut way to interact with other people. And so you need to find, ways to enable those conversations with each other and keep it as human as possible.
Yeah, awesome. Well, you've got quite the fan club. I got some more thank yous to you here in the chat, Todd, and of course I thank you. Genevieve says, "Thank you. I found your invite from the Rotary portal. It's good to know." And Todd says that was an outstanding. Jeff says Todd was an outstanding force at JobCamp. So that must have been a great community thing. So that's awesome. So
many friends.
Yeah, excellent. So hey, I want to get back into kind of our original sort of questions here, Todd. One of the things I thought would be really interesting to talk about was sort of this reverse thought concept. Is that I think a lot of us today we get inspired to be influencers, we get inspired to be online people, we get inspired to build communities, right? And the idea is that we're going to go global, right? We're going global in this COVID world. But we originally talked about some great examples about how maybe potentially going local before you go global. Can you kind of chime in on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's how my career developed over time. I landed in Milwaukee. My wife and I moved there, as I said, over 20 years ago, and I got involved with local groups. And just in the process of being involved with those groups, you start to test sort of your own thinking about what your profession is, what you love, what you're interested in, and develop some confidence around what that means. And I was blogging back in the early 2000s around recruiting topics and was trying it out. And I think the benefit of staying local, to begin with, is that it gives you the chance to experiment with technologies, with points of view, with things that you like and dislike, and that review that you posted that you wish you hadn't posted. We've all got those sorts of failed experiments, in our past. And I think working local gives you a bit of a sandbox to play in, to really hone your game. And I think that works from organization to organization to me. I think my secret weapon has always been what I've learned in one small organization as an experiment is something I apply professionally in another context, and can do so with a greater sense of confidence because I've logged some time as an apprentice doing some things that then I take into my consulting work eventually.
Yeah, and I think that it's hard to talk about communities without talking grassroots, right? And grassroots is really kind of going after one contact at a time until you are able to build that campfire, which, then maybe gets a little bigger, And then I think tonight's an excellent example. You definitely have some people here that help sort of foster the conversation and create this little micro community tonight on this chat. So I think it's been awesome chatting. Any other this is my last call out for people in the chat. I know Sai mentioned again, excellent elaboration. I think maybe collaboration. Todd, many people do miss your experience, design, architecture, and enabling conversation when cultivating community. Thank you, Todd, and thank you, Scott. No, you're welcome, Sai. Thanks for coming. I'll add this to the broadcast. Yeah, so great. Lisa Van Lannen says hello. Hello, Lisa. Thank you for coming tonight. And so any final thoughts before we start to wrap up here, Todd, on building community? Where do you think we're going to go here in the next couple of years, or what's some ideas that we can kind of give some final thoughts here before we go?
I'm very excited about some things that are happening in the community space right now. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I think one of the really interesting areas is just how easy it's become to spin up technologies for communities. There are and will continue to be some very high-end enterprise community platforms like Salesforce Experience Cloud or Khoros,
Mm-hmm.
Telligent, that are heavy hitters, a lot of integrations and things in them. But we've got a ton of other amazing community platforms that are actually you can spin them up in a matter of hours if you're not too picky about what the look and feel of it's going to be. The technology has become so much easier, and I think that's powerful. The other thing that I'm excited to see over the next couple of years happening is more use or ubiquity of voice and video incorporated within community as more of a 24/7 sort of feature, as opposed to sort of occasional YouTube style events
Mm-hmm.
that happen. They can have more, one-on-one video chat with you, more persistent kinds of environments. I've been paying special attention to some of the things happening in the virtual events space. People that have followed my newsletter on Clocktower Advisors have heard me talk about tools like Teo. I'm going to say it wrong. TEOOH.com or Surreal Events, both of which are 3D virtual environments where you can interact with people, multiple people in a conference style setting. It actually simulates almost like a game environment. It simulates those kinds of places to connect and have collaboration. It's a very different experience than the video Brady Bunch effect that we get with all the windows in our Zooms these days.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of connectivity, and I think we need to find different ways to be in our online spaces, and we're getting close to that. I think there's server costs that are involved within providing those kinds of ubiquitous 24/7 video style or game style environments.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we're gonna get there, and I think that's going to be powerful. The other thing that's going to be really interesting is I've actually had a demo this week for some things around AI-based or machine learning-based kinds of community technologies that enable search, that enable chatbots, that do some of the work that community manager does, but takes a lot of the rote day-by-day stuff off of your shoulders, like
Mm-hmm.
reading newsletters or answering simple questions about where can I find this resource, or how do
Mm-hmm.
for somebody else that understands this kind of engineering, just simple moderation kinds of tasks. I think that we're going to see communities getting smarter, and we're going to see them becoming richer and deeper social experiences for each other. So to Sai's point, there's going to be more humanity, I think, involved with them, just because our technology has gotten so much better at giving us nuance in this kind of intermediary sort of medium.
It's interesting. I kind of gather what you're saying too. It's funny because some organizations that I've been working with, everyone is very webcam on. Like, it's like you have a meeting with some organizations and everyone uses a webcam. Everyone's webcam's on. Everyone's ready for a webcam meeting, right? Some organizations, the culture's different, right? And the webcams are off. Like, no one's on camera. Like when you're doing these online meetings today, right? I've been on Microsoft Teams a lot because that's what one of the organizations I work for uses, right? And it's like, I know if I'm meeting with this group of people, it's like, forget, I'm not going to even turn my webcam on. They don't do webcams. So in terms of what made me think, like, kind of connect the dots here is that, some of the platforms you mentioned are avatar based, right? Like I've seen them where it's like you build your own avatar and you're not going in there like, and we talked about this earlier, like where it's like sweatpants on or sweatpants off today, right?
Right.
It's like, do I want to get dressed up and be ready for my, we got our lights, we got all of our kind of like webcam stuff, but with an avatar, I could see that could be helpful, but also damaging to an online event experience too. So just to buckle off that thought that you mentioned. So we'll see how this AI stuff comes up and how the VR integration happens. But
much remains to be seen.
Yeah,
Yes.
much remains to be seen. Yes. Cool. So let's see here. A couple questions here. Sai, our buddy Sai, says, any thoughts on maintaining community hygiene? Many communities often turn toxic.
Yeah. So I like to talk about 3 levels of safety within communities that create trust. And I think this is coming back to that question of trust. If you have trust, places don't turn toxic. And so that, there's three basic levels of trust. The first level within a community trust is the technology itself. Is this a safe platform to be in? Is somebody stealing my user credentials as I log in here? Is this just an awful user experience? Or is this this looks like a legit site. It looks like I can sign in here. Oh, social sign on. Yeah, I can use my Twitter credentials to authenticate with this community. Super. I don't have to create a new password. Gosh, I hate that. So that's level one. Level two is clarity from the organization that's sponsoring that community. Why does this community exist? What is the purpose of this space? What are we as an organization looking to get out of it? If you're a pharmacy company and you're looking to glean data from your user, from people that use your drugs, by sponsoring this community, but yet hiding in the background and not saying that you're this pharmacy company, that's totally dishonest. And that's a great way for a community to become toxic, because you will be found out and you will be called out for it. It's just human nature. It's the way it's going to happen. And then finally, that third level of trust has to be in the benevolence, a trust in the benevolence of the other people who are actually in the platform, a belief that they're going to do social good, that it's going to be a safe place to be. And that means that, it comes back again to having a community manager, so that there is, a level of accountability for people that are operating, in a platform. There has to be rules. The community manager is not just a traffic cop. I don't like that idea of sort of, the community manager as the terminator or the the enforcer, for what goes on there. But that is an element to the role. There are rules for participation in communities where, they're trying to achieve some goal. And if somebody becomes super self-promotional, or worse yet, they become very aggressive and attack other people, or threatening, they need to be removed from that community. They need to be, kicked out, warned, and then banned. If it's bad enough, maybe the authorities even need to be called, if there's an issue. But in most cases, it's a matter of somebody just having a bad day. The community manager takes them aside and says, "Hey, what's going on?" and have a real human conversation with this individual. And most of the time, you call people out on sort of a behavior that wasn't acceptable in a community space, and they say, "Oh man, you know what? I lost my job today. I have, or my dog died, or I'm having a really bad day," and so they really, there does need to be some enforcement, especially if toxicity happens. If there is a basic, an antecedent to trust is a basic belief that the other people in this community want a community and they want to have, positive experiences from that, then, and they're going to be encouraging of whatever it is that you have to say. That's what propagates that goodwill and an effective community, whether it's a community of practice, or community of interest, support community for people who are dealing with a health issue, or they're sports fans or whatever, right?
Yeah, it's also interesting too, because like the other group that I was in, I was very involved in online through the Slack channel. I felt like some of these people like were my neighbors, but yet I had never met them, and I didn't even have their picture because they use an avatar, right? So it's like you build this level of trust with people that you really don't know. You know what I mean? Like, you know them, you feel like you know them, but you don't really know them. I mean, I was sending them sums of money to work on stuff. I didn't know who they were, so, and you can't always believe everything you read on the internet, go figure, but yeah, so interesting how communities could also be the flip side too, where it's like they could be actually a really bad thing and you don't even know it, so.
Sure. You can have bad actors all around. I mean, I think sometimes people join communities because they can't talk to the people around them about whatever their problem is. Sometimes people join communities because they want to pretend to be somebody else and cause grief for others. Sometimes people join communities because they want to try on a different face mask. Like, can I express this element of my personality that I don't express in front of other people? And those are all legitimate reasons to want to be in a community setting. But there's all kinds of things that lie beneath the surface of what any of us do in a community space.
Absolutely. I actually got kicked out of a community recently.
No
Believe
way.
it or not. Yeah, no. That's because I was trying to promote an event, and I guess it was like I did it maybe too often. But Facebook, that's okay. I get it. And honestly, if I'm not getting kicked out, I'm probably not promoting it enough. But But basically, I did find out, and I was a little upset. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, because I was actually really an active user of that group, and but I also understood. Like, I understood as a community manager myself. Like, I get it. Whatever. I didn't agree with them, but whatever. And
there's rules.
yeah, right. There's rules, and I guess I tripped the rules too far. And it was a Facebook group, so it was interesting because I got kicked out, and then it was only a 30-day slap on the wrist, and then I was able to automatically re-added me to the group after I still got the thing that was upsetting is that I would still get posts in my Facebook feed, but I wasn't able to comment on them, which was to me bizarre. It's if I'm not in the group, just take me out of the group, kind of thing. Don't torment me with posts.
You're in a timeout, mister.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I felt like. But all right, we got another one here. A wise man told me 55 years ago, it's okay to have a bad day, but you have to let people know that you're having a bad day. Absolutely, I agree with that.
Yeah, amen. Yeah. I think we need to we need to come with user manuals, right? You open a toy, you get sort of the instructions. We should all have a set of instructions with us that are a little bit more apparent to everybody that we work with.
Yeah, especially right now. I mean, there's a lot of heavy stuff going on in the world. One day it's things are great, next day things are bad. So there's just a lot of, and that's another. If you can understand that someone's having a bad day, you have much better chance of building that relationship you want with them, so
well,
for sure.
And it's important for us to not simply let somebody with a bad day, continue to have that bad day. If we can intervene and say, hey, is everything all right? Can I help? Do you want to talk about it? Just that moment of humanity within that space is incredibly important. I'm working with a company now, Mental Health Innovations, out of Canada, and that's one of their mainstay things is we need those micro interactions with each other, and particularly in online communities where we can't necessarily read each other's moods all the time. We need to be clear and regularly checking in with each other. That everything is good, or if we see a behavior that seems to be just really off for somebody, you need to say something about it. And mental health is going to be the next big pandemic for all of us, and we need to be mindful of taking care of each other.
Yeah, and also, kind of like I said, knowing that people, there's not a black and white for it. That and I think Facebook actually does the right thing with that. That it's not a matter of you're kicked out, you're banned forever. I know Meetup, you're banned forever, and it's you're banned, and it's this is kind of a nice little intermediary. So I guess I see the right and the wrong of it. But enough about that. But ultimately, Todd, it's been awesome talking to you tonight, and everyone who's been participating, please be sure to make sure you subscribe to this channel. Be sure to check out Todd's channel too. I know he's got a channel out there, and subscribe and like the video, please. Todd, before we wrap up, a couple things. One, please tell us where people can get in touch with you and find your information. And two, any final thoughts?
Thanks so much, Scott. This has been incredibly fun. I hope we can do it again.
Please,
and maybe you'll come over and join me on my channel at some point.
Absolutely.
I don't have nearly as many followers as you or subscribers as you do, but I'm working on it. So if anybody's interested in following any of my my ideas or thought work that I'm doing, they could go to clocktoweradvisors.com, which is my company. Or I'm also running a series with my friend Sai over on Catalyzing the Future. We have a YouTube channel for that, and I'm going to be doing a series that's going to be kicking off really soon on building resilient communities online and thinking about the ways that communities help us to be more resilient, more anti-fragile in our approach, and not just to drop buzzwords there, but there is definite thought and intent that goes into communities that can make us more able to deal with difficult or unforeseen sorts of situations. I think we've been covering off on some of those things tonight, and that's kind of what's exciting me right now, and what I'm really putting my energies behind is thinking about ways that we can do things a little bit differently, or as organizations, as a society, and really using technology to be as open-hearted as we can.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful, and it sounds like some great content. I look forward to watching it and engaging in it and being part of your community, Todd. So yeah, so thank you again. Thank you everyone who joined us tonight on the chat, and I look forward to seeing you all again here next week, 8 p.m. for the Content Academy Creator Life, where we talk shop, all things digital marketing, all things content marketing, community building, all the good stuff that I love and enjoy. And one more time, be sure to smash that subscribe button and ring that bell for future notices. And Todd, thank you again, and I'll see you soon. Bye now.
Thank you, Scott. Bye.